first, are these vaccines safe? And the short answer is yes. The Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccines are safe. How do we know this? We know this because of the tens of thousands of people that have been enrolled in these safety studies. And so from the data collected from these tens of thousands of people, the scientific community and the healthcare community have, yes, concluded they are safe for human use. Some common side effects that have been reported are fever, chills, a sore arm. And so all of these side effects normally subside within 24 to 48 hours. And some tips to potentially prevent these side effects is to get enough sleep, drink enough water, and that's really just your immune system reacting to the vaccine, giving you immunity. That's not to say that if you don't have any side effects that it's not working. Your immune system is in fact still working. So yes, they are safe based on these tens of thousands of people from these studies, all showing to have safety for use in humans. Great news. That leads to the second most common question right now is, so if they're safe, what's the deal with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being put on pause? So here, so far, 15 out of 8 million people have experienced a rare blood clotting or thrombotic event within 2 weeks of receiving the vaccine. It's important to note that blood clots and thrombotic events can occur from a variety of reasons. So for example, the chances of a woman developing a thrombotic event from taking hormonal birth control is 1 in 1,000. And that's a calculated risk that a lot of millions of women believe is safe for them to accept. So again, comparing that number to the 15 out of 8 million people who have experienced this thrombotic event, you can't really say that it's from the vaccine. And so after putting this vaccine on pause and resuming rigorous investigations and healthcare studies with the people who have received this vaccine, healthcare professionals have deemed it safe. In fact, you have a higher chance of being struck by lightning many times over and over and over again than one would with receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If you have any further questions about this, I will give you my contact information at the end of this video, and I'm happy to discuss it with you. But overall, yes, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is safe. The next frequently asked question I get is, are they effective? Do they even work? Again, the short answer here is yes, they are effective and they do work in preventing disease. So the Moderna vaccine is 94% effective against disease. The Pfizer vaccine is 95% effective against disease. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is 66% effective against disease. But I want to make sure that nobody gets caught up in these percentages, because all three vaccines have a 100% effectiveness in keeping people out of the hospital. And so that is really the statistic that is super important here to know and to remember, that they have a 100% rate of keeping people out of the hospital, which means saving lives. And that's really one of the most important facts that we've learned from all three of these clinical trials with these three different vaccines. And then another important note is that none of these vaccines contain live virus. So none of them will make you sick. They only contain pieces that will stimulate your immune system to recognize a virus and kill it so that you don't get sick, which is exactly what we want with a vaccine. So yes, they are effective. The next question I get is, what about these variants we're hearing about? Are they effective against the variants? So far, with the data we have collected for the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, we are seeing that yes, they are effective in preventing disease and hospitalization from the COVID-19 variants that are going around. We're not sure yet about the Johnson & Johnson effectiveness, because we just don't have enough data for it yet. But for the Pfizer and Moderna, yes, they are effective against the variants that you're hearing about. Next frequently asked question is, how did they get this vaccine so fast? This seems kind of sketchy. And yes, I acknowledge anyone's questioning of how quickly we've gotten this vaccine. It is definitely important as a scientist myself to always be questioning why and to be wondering what's behind the scenes, what's at play here. So I think that's fantastic that people are really wondering about this. So basically, with unlimited money, the federal government was able to fund all of these laboratories around the entire world that were all working on the same project. So the fact that you have, hundreds of laboratories all working together to solve one problem with an unlimited budget was what allowed these vaccines to be developed so quickly. In fact, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine use the same technology, and were discovered independently, showing again that the scientific method is working. And with this collaboration with all these labs and the unlimited budget, that is really how you can develop this vaccine much faster in the past. Whereas in the past, a lab would have to apply for funding, wait for that funding, potentially not receive that funding. For example, maybe there's only a certain amount of money to go around, and a lab studying diabetes got the money instead. So they'd have to wait longer, which then draws out that process. What's different in this situation with the COVID-19 vaccines is that all of the labs working together on one problem with all the money they need to do these studies and perform the experiments to discover these vaccines, develop these vaccines, and pursue all the safety and efficacy studies. So really, when you break it down, it is not too fast, and it wasn't developed quickly, as in like nobody was rushing. No steps of safety and efficacy were skipped because that's illegal. So it's important to know that throughout this entire process, with the unlimited amount of labs, unlimited amount of money, we were able to pursue the development and the safety and efficacy studies much faster than in the past. And within that framework, no safety steps were skipped. And this is how we know that it is safe. Next frequently asked question I get. So is it safe for pregnant women? And again, the answer is yes. So now we have the clinical data showing tens of thousands of pregnant women who have received the vaccine and have reported the vaccine to be safe, which is fantastic. Earlier in these vaccine trials, we didn't have the data, we didn't have the time to wait to study its effect on pregnant women and not be giving it to non-pregnant populations. So we had to allow non-pregnant people to get vaccinated as we were still collecting data and doing safety studies on how safe this is for pregnant women. Now we have this data and we can say that, yes, these vaccines are safe for pregnant women. It does not affect your fertility. It does not make you sterile. So those are really important take-home messages. And then another take-home message is that pregnant women who get COVID-19 from natural infection have shown much worse clinical outcomes for themselves and their unborn babies. And so really, it's important to point that out, showing that taking the vaccine and acquiring immunity through the vaccine is much safer for the woman and the baby. And that's what the data is telling us with these trials so far. This question: what is herd immunity, and why can't we reach herd immunity with natural infection? So herd immunity means that there's so many people in the population that are immune that the few people that are not immune are far enough away from each other geographically that the virus can't spread and mutate and become a pandemic. So that's what herd immunity means. For the COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 novel coronavirus pandemic, we are seeing now that natural herd immunity is impossible because this virus will mutate before the whole population of the world is immune. So what that means is it's really an evolutionary arms race between the virus and people's immune systems. And so if the virus is mutating so quickly that the immune systems can't keep up, then you'll never reach herd immunity. And that's why vaccination is our best option to reach that herd immunity. And what's important to note that herd immunity through vaccination in this case really means keeping people out of the hospital. Because if everyone is out of the hospital and no one has to go to the ICU from COVID-19, then that would, makes this the equivalence to a cold that might keep you home for a weekend. So again, we don't think that these vaccines will stop everybody from ever getting COVID-19 forever, but it will keep people out of the hospital. And so the way that we're defining herd immunity now is through vaccination and keeping people out of the hospital and alive. Next question. If I have had COVID, do I still need to get the vaccine? Again, the answer here is yes, you still do need to get the vaccine. And the reason for this is because natural infection doesn't always produce long-term antibodies. And with the vaccine, we're seeing that it is producing these long-term antibodies. Another reason is that say you get COVID-19 one time, it's, not too bad, you recover, you're okay. But who knows, if you get it a second time, you could die. And that's a pretty big risk to take that I don't think many people would be signing up for. So that's a reason why, yes, if you have had COVID-19 naturally, we're still recommending that you do get a vaccine because the vaccine will confer a longer term, stronger immunity. Next frequently asked question. If I've had COVID, how long do I have to wait to get the vaccine? And the answer here is that you really only have to wait until you are recovered. So once you're recovered from COVID-19 and you are lifted from your quarantine, you test negative, you can go get your vaccine anytime. The science and the data is telling us that there are no negative reactions if you get your vaccine, right after those 14 days after you've recovered, you're feeling okay. You can get that vaccine ASAP so that you can prevent a second infection. So there is no time, you don't have to wait 30 days, 90 days, or anything like that. Just wait until you feel better and that your quarantine is limited. Oh, and then another frequently asked question. I'm vaccinated. Do I still need to wear a mask? And again, the answer here is yes for now. And we say that because until we reach that herd immunity, you want to make sure that you're doing your part to decrease potential transmission. And so we do that for our friends that either are on immune suppressant drugs, or maybe if somebody can't get vaccinated, or they have to wait longer for a vaccination. We all want to be in this together to protect ourselves and to protect our neighbors. But eventually, we will hopefully have enough vaccinated people that we will have that herd immunity and we will not need to wear masks anymore. We are seeing that when people are vaccinated, there is a less chance of transmission. And so that's a great sign. And again, showing really the effectiveness of these vaccines in stopping the pandemic so that we can leave our masks home and go on an airplane and travel and go to restaurants like we're all dying to do. So those are the lists of the most frequently asked questions that I've been hearing. And I really hope that you have learned something from this, or I hope that I was able to effectively communicate and answer some of these questions for you. And if you have any other questions, I'm here for it. I'm happy to talk with you, answer any questions. I ask you to please email me at askdrbrown@gmail.com, and I can make another video and address any other questions anybody has. Remember, this is a safe place to ask your questions. We are all, caring, intelligent people. I love all of you, and we're here together going through this together. So remember that I see you, I acknowledge you, and your questions deserve to be answered as we get through this together. Thank you.